Everything you knew about investing in the right market won't matter if you don't do the following things when looking to buy your next midterm rental. So, what are these things and what is it? Well, the thing is, a lot of investors or blogs, podcasts will talk about the right market to invest in. But if the right market doesn't have this right type of product, all this thing that you're analyzing at a macro level won't be able to be applicable at the micro level. So here are the things you need to focus on, which is always the fundamental asset, the real estate in itself, that you might be completely overlooking, but that you will not overlook moving forward after watching this video. So let's talk about the fundamentals of real estate. Let's talk about how the real estate, we talk about location, and I think we get hung up on that. But one other thing is, it's not the location that sells, it's the individual homes that sells. There are always record breakers in neighborhoods. There's always homes that, outperform others in neighborhoods. And the idea is, if you think about, the market, that's one thing. Location will always matter. But one thing you really need to be clear on is the asset type. So there is a specific list that I go by when I'm buying my midterm rentals, my AKA temporary housing friendly homes that will allow me to accommodate large families, keyword, to then be able to solve a large problem and be highly compensated for doing so. There's a method to the madness, and it needs to be done in a very specific way. And the way this is done is by following a idea or a framework from the airline industry. And the airline industry is a checklist. That's where it came from. Checklist, checkpoint, and this is the exact checklist that I use. And if I'm doing a napkin analysis, that is, if I want to look at a deal very quickly, these are the things that I'm going to focus on real quick. If you're currently getting value from watching this video, you'll want to make sure you take a second and click below to grab the midterm rental insurance blueprint to help accelerate your process in being able to land these midterm rental insurance contracts with respect to your marketplace. Make sure you click the button below and grab it and continue on with the gems in this video. So recently, depending on when you're watching this, regardless, the data is showing that larger homes are hard to find and are in higher demand. As a matter of fact, as we're talking about this now, data has been shown, and one of the things you want to always rely on is data not being subjective, right? And so if you focus on that, if you look at the data, and where do we look at the data? There's data like from airdna.co. You can go to airdna.co. That is a reference point that we use. There's Mashvisor, which we don't use too much, but that also gives you some good pro formas of how you're going to perform. There's Data Rabu as well. If you notice, all this data is around short-term rentals. Why? Because the deals we want to analyze still should have a strong short-term rental foundation, because if you use this temporary housing strategy, I truly believe, and it might be in your best interest for yourself, you can do things how you want, but it is in your best interest to understand how the short-term rental market is operating. And even if you have no intention of making that your primary strategy, why? Because you always should at least prepare as a business owner, as an operator, to have a backup plan in case you don't have a contract. So with that said, why don't we go through the criteria and checklist that I go through to make sure a deal is vetted. Number one is the number of bedrooms. Number of bedrooms matter, right? Again, we like to go anywhere for 4-bedroom plus. That is because at that point, you're no longer competing with the hotels. Not saying that a 3-bedroom would compete with a hotel, but why not go for a 4-bedroom if you can? Because more heads equals more revenue, right? So sweet spot 4 to 5 bedrooms. If you go to 6, even better, 7. There's data that shows as well that these larger homes can accommodate larger groups, and therefore you can charge a premium. Number 2, think about it. As the silver tsunami is happening, that's when older folks are going to be more prevalent. Literally was watching my Ring camera the other day, our guest checking in. There was an old gentleman. There was a few steps in front of our front doors, and that's actually a rule of thumb where even if you have a few steps in front of the door entrance, you always want to have a separate entrance that doesn't have even a one step. Maybe it has just a little lip. If it's smooth and it's ADA compliant, aka physically handicapped accessible, then even better, because there's going to be people with canes, there's going to be people with wheelchairs, and it is in your best interest to cater to all parties. Because keep in mind, anytime you do a check mark next to that checklist, you're just increasing your chances of being able to accommodate a larger group of individuals that are coming with their different needs, right? So master on main is one, walk-in shower is another. That's a big deal for people who aren't able to lift their legs or need easier access. They're going to be looking for that, and if you already have it, it is a bonus, because again, these things you can add them after, but if I'm looking specifically and I know what I'm looking for, these are the things that give me power literally in the marketplace by having these things. Again, no stairs. If I can find a ranch, why not? It doesn't mean that you can't have a basement. It just means that when you don't have stairs, you're increasing your chances of someone being able to live on the entire floor without needing to go upstairs or downstairs. Now, if you do have stairs, if you do have 2 levels, if you do have 3 levels, if you do have a basement included, you just need to make sure that that one floor could accommodate one person or the entire family without anyone needing to go downstairs. This includes doing laundry. All right, so keep that in mind. Garage is definitely a nice to have. Certainly not a must have, but it is certainly a nice to have. Someone's coming from a place with a garage and they're coming with their cars, they're not familiar with the neighborhood. No matter how nice the neighborhood is, if you were to choose to have an option, garage or outside, you'd pick garage. I have a black car during pollen days. My goodness, that thing gets covered up by just being outside in 2 minutes. So again, garage. Another thing is there's a lot of EVs, electronic vehicles, that are now coming around. So it might be in your best interest to even have an EV charger. One of our homes has that, and we can accommodate people with EV chargers. And that is actually something that came up as a feedback in one of our reviews. So it's actually in your best interest to have, again, an EV in your crib. Being pet friendly, a huge amenity, is actually having an entire dedicated video around that. People are traveling with their pets, and therefore, what do they need? Well, certainly they do not want to have any type of carpet. I want to stay away from carpet. Having a fenced-in backyard is a huge bonus. Doesn't mean that if you're buying a deal or going to operate a deal, co-host a deal, or manage a deal that it doesn't have fenced-in backyard, that it's a deal breaker. But certainly I want that as a plus, because people will ask you, is the backyard fenced in? So that's huge bonus to have. Basement, reason we like basements, it again maximizes cash flow. Again, there's a difference between maximizing for cash flow versus after repair value, right? And so one of the things you want to focus on is when you're creating more space within a basement, it allows you to either create an entertainment center or even additional bedrooms, which then makes your asset even more valuable from the sense of how much cash flow you can generate. I like basements because it always gives us the opportunity to then create more spaces to accommodate larger families, right? Back deck, big entertainment. People are coming to have an experience, and back deck screams experience. It screams being able to grill, it screams being able to have a fire pit, it screams being able to sit and just relax and chat and talk, have memories. You want to give people a space to have that, and that's why I believe that a back deck is a huge selling point, and you can see it because people truly take advantage of it. Any of the properties that we have, they're sitting outside, they're enjoying their time, and it's a great place for them to enjoy the backyard. Right now, I'm saving probably one of the best and most important for last, because a lot of people, I'll talk to them and I'll say, how did you buy this deal? And say, my realtor said it was a good deal. And I'm like, as a realtor myself, I don't need to live off my commission, but I know that as realtors, you can be jaded and motivated to sell a property, to sell it. And that's not to throw shade on realtors by any means, but their job is to sell homes. So they have to sell it to you too. Your job is to make sure that you and your realtor are in alignment, and you're not using subjectivity to close a deal to get the deal done, but instead you're using numbers. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. AirDNA.co is a forecast that we use. If you have full access to it, it's good for you to also look at the comparables in the area and what they're grossing, and use that as your forecast baseline. Now, you can also use the enemy method by looking at them. This is one of the methods that one of our guest that came on our episode 117, Avery Call, came and told us, called Short-Term Rental Rockstar, Avery Call, and told us about the enemy method, where you're really just looking at your competition and saying, well, what do they have that I can have? And then what don't they have that I can have in my property that I can add, and then we'll fill in the gap in the marketplace. It's as simple as that. Doing that research, looking around a square mile radius of 2 miles, 1 mile, whatever it is you want to look at, and say, what are the actual short-term rentals? How are they doing? What are they grossing? Let that be a baseline, and I know I can outperform them by closing the gap on these few amenities that they don't have. That simple. It is that simple. And we use airdna.co to give us a forecast. And the rule of thumb here is, if there's something that you're buying, right, and the value of the home is $1 million, right? We like to look at something that can gross 15% of the purchase price. So can it make $150,000 a year, right? If it can, it's a candidate to consider. Doesn't mean it's a signed deal. It just means it gives us that confidence to move forward. Then, is it in the occupancy in the marketplace? Is it more than 50%? I mean, I don't want to go for a market that has an average occupancy of less than 50%. I'm giving myself half the chance. Now, do I know we can get to 60, 70, 80%, 100%? We can, right? No pun intended there, right? But we want to give ourselves the best shot. Remember, keep in mind, anytime you're doing this is to give yourself the best shot. Now, to finish on a high note, so again, 15% rule of the purchase price and 50% occupancy is a good rule of thumb. Then we can start to dig in and look for more, using the data areas I mentioned it earlier, airdna.co, Mashvisor, Data Rabu. Check those out. And then last but not least, check out areavibes.com. As a matter of fact, put in your neighborhood right now, put in your address and see what score you get. But then when you look at the score, don't just look at the score. See the areas where you scored high end or low end, whether it's community, whether it's walkability, whether it's schools, etc. And then you can get a gauge to see how accurate it is in your area, to then show confidence to use it in areas that you've never been. It's essentially a good vibe check. We don't want to have a score anything lower than 65. You don't want to go into kind of a rough neighborhood territory unless that's your strategy, right? Because again, every neighborhood needs a home or a short-term rental. But again, obviously, we like to go far higher in decent neighborhoods. And then, of course, the vibe check. Would you live there, or would you have your mother live there? That's it. That's the vibe check. Does it pass the vibe check? If it's a vibe and I would live there, like genuinely, like I can go to Google and kind of go on Google Maps and be like, oh, this is a cool neighborhood, this is tight, then make the move, right? So these are important things. It's everything that we are not talking about besides the market. Just because you pick a market that's good does not guarantee that the asset type, the property, and the criteria is the right one to be able to move forward. I recorded this video because I don't want people to be misled by just looking at these big blogs that share the best areas you need to invest in and then completely overlook the fundamentals of real estate. Yes, location matters as far as the marketplace goes at a macro level. When you get to the micro details of the property, you want to make sure you buy the right asset, because not all assets are created equal. And now you have officially found out everything you need to know to choose the right market. If you're able to assess this way, you will not have a problem. It will now matter that you're actually selecting the right criteria that makes sense for the market that you're choosing. And without doing that, again, you can kind of throw the market away, because at the end of the day, it's about the property, and not all properties are created equal. If you got value from this video, make sure you watch the be careful where you spend your money on your short-term rentals.